Hello and welcome to BBC News, and we start straight away in France because big numbers have taken to the streets again. The 11th day of mass protests against the change in pension age in France. Let me show you the live pictures because the scene already debris, and you can see the lines of riot police all stacked up. And in the last little while I've been watching the pictures of small charges by those police to push some of those protesters back, and this right in the centre of Paris, the 11th day of these mass protests that have sprawled over the last, 2.5 months, as so many people protest against this change of the pension age, moving it from 62 to 64. So large numbers on the streets again. We had that meeting between the president and the unions and the government only yesterday. That ended again in deadlock. Let's bring in Hugh Schofield, who's there on the streets for us. And Hugh, as I was saying, there is deadlock. You have all of these protesters continuing to voice their concern about the change, and a government insistent there will be no step down in terms of what they're laying out.
Indeed, and in fact you join us at a particularly tense moment on the route of the march. You can probably see the smoke billowing out behind me on the other side of those ranks of gendarmerie mobile. There's been a sudden kind of rush of people and a big hullabaloo, people shouting and booing the police. I'll tell you why it's happening, though. It's because there's a restaurant across the road there called La Rotonde, which is a symbolic restaurant for President Macron. It's where he went on the night of his first election. And the fire has been set just outside the restaurant, it seems. We were there closer about 20 minutes ago, and it was being attacked, pelted with bottles and stones and bits of bitumen ripped up from the pavement. So once again, the famous black blocs, these kind of revolutionary types who often graft themselves onto the head of the demonstrations, have been active. And again, a moment of tension here with these bangs every now and again. Often they're grenades, or they're sort of, they call them the grenades launched by the police just to get people to move away, and tear gas as well. So a classic moment here. I mean, nothing terribly dangerous, but certainly tense.
Hugh, we were just looking at the restaurant. They were just putting out that fire you were describing. In terms of the basic issue here, the constitutional courts are looking at that move to ram this through Parliament. That is likely to come next week, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's passed through Parliament through this constitutional procedure which got everyone so angry, which there was no vote on the text, but there was a vote of confidence in the government. So that it's passed through Parliament. What happens now is it's before the Constitutional Council, which is the kind of last step, if you like, this body of wise men and women which decides whether a law is in accordance, in conformity with the Constitution. It's possible that this council will take exception to bits of the law and may void it of some of its substance, but it's only a possibility, and it seems to be unlikely that it would remove the core element of the law, which is this question of raising it from 62 to 64, the pension age. But as you say, that's next week. That's on the April the 14th, next Friday, tomorrow week. And if it passes that hurdle, then very quickly it could become law, at which point, you know, I think a lot of people are asking themselves, what will happen to this movement of protest? What is the point of continuing to protest when something has become law? It won't stop people feeling very angry, but I think there might be people saying, well, it's law now, let's change tactic, let's do something else to bring this government down.
Hugh, the government is absolutely insistent that France cannot afford not to make this move from 62 to 64. But in terms of what we're seeing, the protests, the way they've gone on for 2.5 months, how much other issues, general unhappiness, is woven into everything we're seeing on the streets?
Well, I think an awful lot. You engage anyone here. These are left-wing demonstrations. These are people on the left and on the far left and on the fringes of the far left, the people who are carrying out these these acts of vandalism and so on. And if you obviously they also enjoy the support in their opposition to the law of a good majority of the population. But if you engage people, very quickly you get onto other subjects. You get onto things that are not the pension law. You get onto the whole issue of capitalism and on the ecology, all these issues, much bigger issues about the future of the planet and of our societies. And to that extent, they're on a bit of a hiding to nothing, because quite clearly, these are far greater issues than the issues of than the pension, and the pension is a minor one. That's going through. These other big issues are still there.
We're just looking at a variety of different pictures, Hugh, that we're getting from across Paris.
Yeah.
And of course, these protests are going on in many different cities as well. That is worth remembering. But we were talking there about Emmanuel Macron. He has invested so much personal capital, his own reputation, in this change to the pension age. Is it possible, even at this late stage, there could be concessions, or is that unlikely?
I think it's most unlikely. I think he's so far steeped into it that he can't possibly go back. It's like Macbeth, so far in that returning is worse than going o'er, as the bard said. I don't think he can. He's taken the punishment. He's very, very unpopular. So what's the gain from turning round? Whereas if he keeps going, he's not going to get more unpopular, and eventually he might say, well, I might win respect in a year or two from people who say, well, at least this was the president who was prepared to take on the crowd. So I can't see any possibility of him turning around on this issue of raising the age to 64. Quite apart from the fact that he's not up for re-election, he knows that. His next step will be to, well, whatever, we don't know, but 4 years from now he will not be in French politics. So he can afford, in his view, to make the grand gesture, do something for the sake of the country rather than for his own popularity. That's certainly his estimation, and to be fair to him, there's a good chunk of the country, maybe a quarter or a third, who agree with him. The problem is there's 2/3 who don't.
Well, Hugh, we're going to leave you for the next little while. You're there, you'll continue to be there for the next few hours. Let's just go to the live pictures full on screen and just show you the latest there from Paris, because as well as all those police you saw behind Hugh, more in the streets around that restaurant that was on fire just a short while ago. So we will return regularly through the course of our programme and keep you right up to date with what is going on in Paris.